Have you ever wondered how the sun's first rays were greeted in ancient Greece? Imagine the first blush of light creeping over the horizon, the world stirring awake under the gentle warmth of the sun. The dawn marked a fresh start, a new day in the life of the ancients. In those days, the people of Greece were early risers, usually greeting the day before the sun had fully emerged from its nightly slumber. In the stillness of the morning, the common man would rise from his bed, shrugging off the remnants of sleep. His day would begin with the grueling tasks that awaited him. You see, in ancient Greece, the majority of the populace were not philosophers or statesmen, but ordinary people, much like you and me. Their lives revolved around work, and the dawn was their starting whistle. For the farmer, the day began with the tolling of the bell. He would shuffle towards his fields, guided by the soft golden light of the early morning. His hands, roughened by years of toil, would grip the handle of his plow, the earth yielding beneath its weight. As he worked, he'd watch the sun slowly climb the sky, its light growing brighter with each passing moment. The fisherman, on the other hand, would have already set sail by the time the dawn arrived, heading out to sea under the veil of darkness. As the first light of day touched the water, he'd cast his nets, hoping for a bountiful catch. And let's not forget the craftsmen, potters, blacksmiths, and weavers. Their day too began with the dawn, the rhythmic pounding of the blacksmith's hammer against metal, the potter's wheel spinning, the weaver's loom clacking. These were the sounds that echoed through the streets of ancient Greece as the world woke up. The sun's ascent was a symphony of activity, the lifeblood of a civilization that thrived on industry and hard work. As the sun rose higher, so did the bustling activity of daily life in ancient Greece. By mid-morning, the streets of ancient Greece were alive and thriving, but what exactly were they up to? Picture the bustling city-states of Athens or Sparta, where the sun has risen high enough to cast shadows in the corners of the agora or marketplace. Here, the heart of the city-state beats with the rhythm of daily life. The agora is a hive of activity, with tradesmen peddling their wares and citizens bartering for the best deals. You'd find a cornucopia of goods, from olives and grapes to handcrafted pottery and intricate jewelry. Just off to the side, the morning assembly, known as the ecclesia, would be in session. This was the cornerstone of democracy in ancient Greece. Citizens would gather to discuss and debate issues of the day, casting their votes on matters that ranged from legal reforms to military strategies. Meanwhile, children, at least those of the higher classes, would be heading to school. Their mornings would be filled with lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic, as well as music and physical education. For the children of ancient Greece, education was a holistic pursuit, aimed at nurturing both the mind and the body. Back in the homes, women had a domain of their own. They were the managers of the household, tasked with ensuring the smooth running of daily life. Their mornings would be spent preparing meals, spinning wool, and overseeing the slaves. Despite the limitations placed on them by a patriarchal society, women of ancient Greece played a crucial role in maintaining the social fabric of the city-states. As the streets began to empty and the noise of the agora faded, it signaled the end of the morning's hustle and bustle. But the day was far from over. The citizens of ancient Greece knew the importance of a hearty midday meal to replenish their energy for the rest of the day. As the morning activities wound down, it was time for the most important meal of the day. As the sun reached its peak, the Greeks took a break for their main meal. But what did they eat? Let's step back in time and join the Greeks at their dining table. The main meal, known as deipnon, was served in the afternoon. Unlike our multi-course meals today, it was a simple fare, often consisting of a single dish. Vegetables were a staple, as Greece's fertile lands were generous with their bounty. Cabbage, onions, lentils, and beans were common, often seasoned with herbs and olive oil, a product Greece is still renowned for today. The Greeks loved their grains too. Bread, made from barley or wheat, was a regular feature at the table. And let's not forget the cheese, usually made from the milk of sheep or goats. Meat was less common, reserved for special occasions. Fish and seafood, however, were a different story, especially if you lived near the coast. And how did they eat, you may wonder? Most meals were eaten in a reclining position on couches. This wasn't a quick bite on the go, but a leisurely affair, often accompanied by conversation and sometimes even music. But the afternoon wasn't just about food. As the day heated up, the Greeks embraced the concept of siesta. Work was set aside and people retreated indoors or into the shade. This break, known as hesychia, was a time for rest and relaxation. It was believed that a brief pause from the day's activities not only provided respite from the scorching sun, but also rejuvenated the mind and body for the tasks ahead. Drinking water was usually drawn from public fountains, and wine was a common beverage, though often diluted with water. Speaking of wine, the Greeks had a certain etiquette around it. It was considered uncouth to get drunk, so they always made sure to consume it in moderation. With their bellies full and a short rest, the Greeks were ready for the second half of their day. So, as we move from the sunlit courtyards of the afternoon into the coming evening, let's continue our journey into the ordinary yet fascinating life of ancient Greece. As the sun began to set, what did the Greeks do to wind down after a long day? In the golden hue of the descending sun, the Greeks wrapped up their day's work. The tasks varied depending on one's social status, but for the most part, these chores were a blend of household duties and business obligations. The women, after preparing the afternoon meal, would often be found spinning wool or weaving on their looms, while men concluded their day's work in the fields, marketplaces, or workshops. But it wasn't all work and no play. As the evening shadows grew longer, leisure activities took center stage. Public baths were a popular destination, not just for cleanliness but also for socializing. These were places where news was exchanged, debates were held, and friendships were made or renewed. If not at the baths, one might find the Greeks at the gymnasium, indulging in physical exercise, or at the theater, engrossed in a play. Greeks held a deep appreciation for both physical prowess and artistic expression, seeing both as integral to a well-rounded life. Perhaps the most sophisticated of these evening gatherings were the symposiums, exclusive parties held in private homes. Here, the Greeks reclined on couches, sipped wine, engaged in philosophical discussions, and enjoyed performances of music and poetry. These were places for intellectual stimulation as much as they were for relaxation and entertainment. Yet it wasn't all about leisure. Evening was also a time for reflection and education. Parents would share stories and lessons with their children, often using the tales of gods and heroes to instill moral values. The day's end was as much about preparing for the future as it was about unwinding from the present. And so, under a starlit sky, the Greeks called it a day, ready to start fresh at the break of dawn. Whether it was in the bustling public baths, the vibrant theaters, or the intimate symposiums, the ancient Greeks knew how to make the most of their evenings. Their blend of chores, leisure, and intellectual pursuits speaks volumes about their balanced approach to life. A lesson we can still learn from today. From dawn to dusk, life in ancient Greece was a blend of work, politics, education, and leisure. As we trace the path of the sun across the Greek sky, we've journeyed together through the lives of ordinary people in ancient Greece. Their lives, much like ours, were filled with daily routines, tasks, and pleasures. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. The day began at dawn, with the sun casting its first rays over the olive groves and vineyards. The Greeks, both men and women, were early risers, beginning their day with chores and work. A balanced life was at the heart of their ethos, with an emphasis on both physical and mental well-being. This was reflected in their daily activities, demonstrating a deep understanding of the importance of a balanced lifestyle, centuries before our modern world caught on. By mid-morning, the bustling marketplace would be at its peak. Here, the Greeks engaged in commerce, politics, and social interactions, showing their knack for community and society. The agora, the center of Athenian life, was more than just a marketplace. It was a place of learning, discussion, and civic engagement. As the day wore on into the afternoon, meals played a central role. Food was not just sustenance but a social event, a time to gather, share stories, and enjoy the fruits of their labor. Their diet, simple yet wholesome, is still revered today for its health benefits. Evenings in ancient Greece were reserved for relaxation and leisure. After a day of work and societal engagement, the Greeks understood the need for downtime. They spent this time engaging in recreational activities, reinforcing the importance of leisure and relaxation in their balanced approach to life. So the next time you see the sun's first rays, remember the bustling day that awaited an average Greek in the ancient times. Their approach to life, balancing work, education, and leisure, is a lesson we could all learn from. Their wisdom, even after thousands of years, still holds relevance in our modern world.